I am one of the board members of um, the Reading League Wisconsin. I've been on the board for about 3 years, which is awesome, and we're so happy to have you here. My life currently, I'm a mom of 3 kids. My 3 daughters, ages 8, 5, and 3. And so I am a literacy specialist and instructional coach in a suburb of Milwaukee. And I have been in that role for about 4 years and have been teaching for just shy of 20. So yes, I know I'm young and I can't believe been teaching for 20 years, but that's okay. It's just pretend. Anyway, I'm so glad you're here this morning. I hope everyone has their coffee. I'm not gonna, I've had such a great, if you've looked or have noticed, I think everybody has access to the slides, but if you do not, I can share them with you. If you missed the previous book study kind of item, I've added the link to the recording that we have on YouTube, so you can kind of go back and reference and see Jeanette's presentation, and then as we continue. Please, I think we're running it as we've done similarly. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and I will do my best to monitor that. And then if you need access to the slides, let me know. It is a chat. It is truly time for conversations and time for thinking and time for sharing. And so pending, again, I think what we've done last year, breakout rooms or situations along those lines, we're happy to have you. So what is everybody's weekend plans before we get started? You can put them in the chat if you'd like. I will get the access to the slides. Let me share. Okay, you're going to see me do this. My apologies. Slideshow. For some reason, because I am not the owner, I may not be able to get you all the access, but I will be sent out. Let's see. And it looks like we've got some options. We've got a birthday, and there are so many fun things. Oh, your son's birthday, who's 27, walk with friends, lots of family time. I'm not sure if you guys are able to access those slides, but if you can, great. If not, I will make sure you get to them by the end of the day. And with everything. So, as you know, we meant June 22nd, chapters 1 and 2 we went over. Today we're looking at chapters 3 and 4. And so next week, July 20th, we will be hitting that July 27th. We'll look at chapters 5 and 6, and then chapter 7 and 8, and then August 3rd. So a variety of individuals will be supporting this work. And so you'll see different faces, and we're very excited for that. I'm glad everyone was finally able to access the slides. So let's get this started. I have to head to a softball tournament after this. I'm getting text messages as my daughter is playing. So can you do this? Can you do that? I'm like, no, I can't. This is my time. So I'm glad to be here with you all. So with that, let's start with kind of one of the big key takeaways that I had, which was core vocabulary forms the bedrock for proficient comprehension. When we look back to what we shared in chapters 1 and 2, one of the things that Dr. Hiebert does is talks about how small change is big growth. And I think that that's really helpful. And so when you look at chapters 3, we're really getting into kind of that bedrock, as she says, and that's that part of comprehension. My world that I live in is a lot of secondary. And so I work with teachers who struggle with figuring out, what can I be doing? What is comprehension? How does this, they're not understanding anything, and I'm like, okay, and what are we doing? And I think this statement is something that I planned on sharing a lot with my with my staff and continue to talk about like, where are we looking at vocabulary? Because words will make a big, big difference. So to share, we're going to talk a little bit about those learning targets. And so my learning targets for today are to understand the importance of what core vocabulary is, but also to understand the importance of language history and ideas and how to incorporate it into instruction. And finally, to clarify the importance of both vocabulary and core reading in order to see big results through small changes. Does that sound good with everybody? Can you get a thumbs up if that sounds like a positive learning target situation? Awesome. Okay. So just to summarize, everybody was likely able to read some chapters 3 and 4. If you would like and you want to unmute, can you unmute and share some of your key takeaways from chapter 3 and 4, or you can put it in the chat? I know that winery is sounding nice as people are thinking. Who doesn't need a morning mimosa for some conversations around the history of words? Thanks, Sarah. Sarah shared that compound words have different meanings from their base words. That was something I agree with. I totally saw a lot of that same concept. Another take on like chapter 4 and the history of word origins. Yes, and we'll get to that soon. I don't know if anybody else like nerded out a lot with that, but that was something that I totally did. Gabby shared that it's important how vocabulary is important for overall comprehension. Completely agree. That's kind of why it's our learning targets. And I think the way that Hiebert like explains it is very insightful because it's not just a literacy-based concept. That was something that I appreciated. Chris shared that it seems like an ongoing process to think about which words to teach students from a text, and it takes a lot of planning. Yes. And it also, I agree, and I think we'll get to find some options around that too. So when we look at chapters 3 and 4, before we go on, let's look at what another take was. We gotta scroll up. There was the use of strategies, because oftentimes it's how to make vocabulary meaningful with students, especially struggling learners. Agreed. And those strategies were huge. And I will share some more of those at the end. What a great way to get started. Thanks, everyone. So as I looked at chapter 3, that role of vocabulary was huge. When we look at and guide teachers or students on developing those effective vocabulary, I love some of the labels that she put on it. I loved how we were talking about like the word knowledge and being word conscious and adding that word consciousness into our daily conversations. My 5-year-old this morning at breakfast was like, Mom, what does sensitive mean? And I'm like, okay, great. So they were watching, you'll laugh, my children were watching Word Girl on PBS, and they were like, oh, he's highly sensitive. And my 5-year-old's like, sensitive, what does sensitive mean? And I said, well, and you try to language that, and you try to use your brain to put it into a word that like they kind of get, but you also don't want to put connotation with the word that would be problematic. And this is something that as a mom, I have to do frequently because I'm a language person. I like to talk and I use words that my kids may not all know. And I think that's matches a lot with what happens in classrooms is like we use words and then the kids are like, what's that mean? I can still think of in a college setting, someone used a word that I didn't have a definition for it. I'm like, I didn't go into sensitive. Well, sensitive is like senses, and think like I didn't say that. I could have, but I was like, no, I just reframed it into a word that works. But that's that idea of making them word conscious. And I loved that. I also loved in chapter 4 how that vocabulary and strategies were there, that engagement in word learning, and then the depth versus breadth. And there was a lot of connections that I was able to make to other tools that we've used as past book studies. So I will hopefully share those out as well. Any other feedback or pieces of information that anyone would like to share? You're welcome to unmute or put in the chat before we go on. Show of hands before we get into the discussion. Did any like reflect onto how they were learning words early? Like, did anybody do their root definition? Like, you need to look, here's your list of words and find the definitions. Yes, that was me too. I feel like so frequently in my own learning at 30, 40 years ago into now, like I remember that situation, like here's the words and do this, and here's the words and do this. And we were only looking at the definitions. I never probably knew what a root was until college. And that sounds terrible, but that was just like, that wasn't a part of the language conversations when we were wording that. I learned words and I could have an ability to do that. Sarah, thanks for sharing. Tell me more about, if you would, what's Wordly Wise? Did anybody use Wordly Wise?
So Wordly Wise was a program where basically, like you said, they gave you a list of words and it had a glossary in the back of the book. And the first assignment was always to copy the definitions. And basically it came down to, when you were looking at it, it had nothing to do, you weren't worrying about what the word meant. It was how many definitions the word had, how much you had to write, how much you had to copy down. It was, yeah, it really was not the most effective way to teach vocabulary because it was just stress about all the writing you had to do.
It was. I know that was like our spelling list too. Um, I joke because our staff love the Freyer model, and I'm like, the
Mm.
Freyer model has its moment. A semantic map will go much farther than the Freyer model will, but that's the same concept of like, oh, here's the word, here's the definition. Now what's the synonyms and antonyms? Do you know that most kids don't know what a synonym and an antonym is, even in 8th and 9th and 10th grade? And
Hmm.
like, that's the part where I'm like, just that basic doesn't match. And that's a lot of where I kind of connected with chapters 3 and 4 is that there is different types of word knowledge. There is different types of ways to look at that. The depth and breadth of this requires learning. And learning strategies, and it's not limited to ELA. And I feel like that really sums up chapters 3 and 4. So as we move on and being aware of our mornings, I want to look at and open up some of our discussions. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing. Looking at our discussions, I really only have 3 questions, but the 3 questions are connected to what are some of the ways, more important and more importantly, successes you've had in using word families in the classroom? And number 2, I'd like you to share and discuss how to incorporate morphological analysis into your vocabulary lessons. And 3, considering both of these chapters, how might you differentiate vocabulary instruction into your needs of diverse learners? So with that, I would like us, I'm going to just do based on our size. I got to double check our size, to be honest. I'm managing a lot of things now. Yeah, we've got a left. Let's do that. I'm going to split us into some breakout rooms, and hopefully we can share out this information. So I will put, hopefully, I don't know what we're seeing, so I'm going to keep putting this on there. Let's go. I was not as prepared as there we go. 20. All right, we got it. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and if you guys would take about the next 10 minutes and share out some of the thoughts and see what happens. I look forward to that, and I will repost those discussion questions. And resume share. Okay. There we go. So number one, your first question is, what are some of the ways, more importantly, you've used this in the classroom? Number two, how can you incorporate morphological analysis into your vocabulary lessons? And number three, considering both of these chapters, how might you differentiate vocabulary instruction to meet the needs of your diverse learners in your classroom? So with that 10 minutes, I'm going to open up the rooms. I hope you enjoy the discussion. I'll pop in and listen as we can. Here we go.
Sarah, I'm putting the certificates of attendance into the chat. So
Okay.
I think we forgot to do that. I just
Yep.
realized it. So then you can reshare them because I think make sure they know that they're there. Okay.
Yes.
The first form, Sarah, is from last week, and the second form is for today.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
All right.
I'm adding it to the slides.
Okay. Anything else you need from me?
I don't believe so, Jeannie. Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Oh, I will kind of see. I'll get through the morning. How's that? And then
I
I will.
appreciate that too.
Well, you too. All right. So thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna step out. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to discuss and connect with other educators. It's so helpful. I don't know, maybe some of you are like me who are feeling a little downtrodden, and I'm like, I haven't like had a good literacy discussion with somebody who cares like that, like me. Because it's summer and it should be, and we should be relaxing. We should be having fun. All of those are real. And sometimes I just want to talk about words. So feel free to put in the chat, or you are welcome to unmute. But what was like what are some of the ways, and more importantly, I want to hear about some of the successes that you've had using word families in your classroom? We'll monitor the chat, or like I said, unmute. Robin unmuted. I appreciate you, Robin. Share out. What did you come up with?
Well, when I think about word families, we've regrouped our high frequency words, we call them heart words, this past couple of years in first grade to match them up by spelling patterns. But the piece we didn't tie in that I'm now geeking out about, that's my new phrase,
Love
is looking at the history, the meaning of the word. So like I shared in my group, doing say, says, said all together. And yes, looking at the spelling pattern, but talking about why it is that way at a first grade level. But thinking about the word ben, B-E-E-N, is be plus the suffix n. So then tying that in when we talk about the heart word be, and then being and ben, that vocabulary for some of those words, those function words that are so hard to describe anyway, but being able to look at their different forms and kind of the history of those spelling patterns to help build that in.
I love that. I appreciate your geekiness, if you will, and that's the most specific compliment I can give, as you've embraced the geeking out word. How have the first graders like taken to that?
We have seen a large increase in not as much their spelling of those heart words, we're working on that, but reading them. Like I said, this year, when we start back to school in August, I have to convince my team that we should look at that list again and really tighten up where things are so that they're all together and get them to buy into doing that etymology, morphology piece of it as well. But I'm hoping that I can convince them.
I will put out the good vibes in order to do so. Research will help you on that. And here's some research. There's more that you will get to. So thanks so much, Robin, for sharing. Anyone else want to share kind of on discussion question number 1? Okay. Personally, something like if you care, I think word families were a really missed opportunity. And I connected to the word family, but I think the etymology piece is that missed opportunity for us to deepen. In Wisconsin, the forward exam at the middle school talks about like dictionary usage and dictionary definitions and like how to figure it out. And I think that was an easy thing that teachers would just gloss over and not really address intentionally. And I think my takeaway from these couple chapters is like the intentionality of word and word consciousness is going to take everybody very far, both academically in their classes, out of their classes. And I appreciate that. And I think of the forward because I think like a kid can look at a dictionary and they don't know what the top parts of the words on the top of a dictionary. I know that there's a name for it, and because it's summer and my coffee isn't kicked in yet, I can't think of them like the flag words, but you know, they know what those labels are, and then they also don't know like abomination, ab-ination, like they don't see the other elements of it. I had a 6th grade teacher who loved to say, use what you know to figure out what you don't know. And I think that's the biggest part that comes with vocabulary is like, use what you know and figure out what you don't know. And empowering kids to do that would be really helpful. So Robin shared a little bit about how she incorporates some morphological analysis in vocabulary lessons. Does anyone else want to share or put in the chat, you know, some successes that you've had when it comes to that morphological analysis. Maybe an intervention, maybe a tool. I can only imagine the brilliant conversations that were happening in the rooms.
At my school, we piloted a program called MemBean. It's an online program, and it is 100% better than what we were using. We were using vocabtest.com, and it was, like we said before, learn the word, write the definition down, take a test, they forget the word. So what I like about the MemBean program is that they have different interactions that the kids can use. Like they have, we were talking in our breakout room about visuals, and they'll have a video that like shows the word, so they have that visual to remember the word. They have little quizzes. They use the word in a sentence. They'll have a word constellation. So our school did decide to buy the program, so we are going to be using it next year. So I'm excited to see if that helps increase our vocabulary next year.
No, I love MemBeam. I've used it in other schools and it's a great example. I did put it in the chat if anyone was curious to look at it, because I do think it's important that with book studies, we also walk away with resources. So MemBeam is definitely one of them. Did anybody look at the resource Hiebert put in there, the text, I'm trying to find it now, the textproject.org?
I did. I looked at it and I found the books the mini books that they have on some of the word origins, like where the food words come from, you know, where do we get our words from different languages. I found them interesting. I was trying to think of how I could use them in my classes, but I used to teach, right now I'm a special ed interventionist, but I used to teach a regular ed reading skills course, and I would do a weekly words where we would talk about, but the vocab words were always based on a root. And we would talk about what the root means. And we would do activities with about 5 words that contain the root, but I'd always kind of extend it, try and help them, you know, see if they could find other words that had the roots in them and those kinds of things. So it wasn't just wasn't random words, and it also wasn't words based on a text. So I liked the fact that we could have like a theme through the different Latin roots and Greek combining forms.
Yes, agreed. And I've seen a lot of successes with that too. Jennifer shared that the word matrix and explicitly teaching suffixes and prefixes and their meaning and how they change the base word has also been pretty successful. And I think that that's very important. In the chat, I did put that text project in. And then one of the big things and big proponents, earlier this summer, I sat in a webinar with Michelle Elia, who was at our Wisconsin Reading Conference last year, and Dr. Hiebert will be coming this year, and she led for the 95% group, not to name drop, just trying to give you resources, her Morphology Matters, and she talked a lot about the word matrices and like the coordinated root suffix morphology instructions. So if you haven't looked at that, and one of the things she did also talk about was etymology online, and this is one of those things that, especially that if you've never seen this or haven't thought about it, or even as our own learner, like looking at those words, the part that I looked at and comparing the two presentations is like in the 2,500 words that Freddy talked about, or may not be as necessary as the etymology piece. But when you get to those more advanced grade, that 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, etym online will be really beneficial as that word exploration, and like almost using that more as your dictionary than saying like go on Webster's or Google. So I think it's worth pointing that out. And it brings us into kind of the third discussion, which is considering how both of these chapters might differentiate vocabulary instruction and meet the needs of your diverse learners in your classroom. And I heard Robin talk a little bit, and maybe a little Sarah too, just with this idea that the diverse learners, Dr. Hiebert actually took in a lot of concepts around ELs. And I know Gabby has a passion for students with English as their non-primary language. And so anybody who has ideas or suggestions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute and share out.
Sarah, is it okay if I share? And I put a plug in. I am doing the chapter on English language learners, so do come and join me for that day. I think that when we're thinking, or something that I have found some personal success, and our teams have found great success related to the thinking of vocabulary instruction to meet diverse learners, specifically thinking of English language learners, is to think back or to recognize that sometimes the key vocabulary is not explicitly in the text, right? That the primordial question when we're thinking about vocabulary as the highest predictable variable for reading comprehension, once we're able to encode and decode at a level of independency, is understanding for us as the people that are planning the architecture of the lesson, what is the why of this text? What is the philosophical why of the text? And what is the big idea about the text? And how is it that this text is going to shape the student's perception and entrance of, their world? And from there, you get a really good sense as to what is the key vocabulary that is connected to it. And then thinking about, do we create an opportunity for students, especially diverse populations, to show us what they know in relationship to that concept, to see how close they are into the vocabulary, or do we give them the vocabulary? Because there's a philosophical question that is connected to a pedagogical practice that needs to be answered at that point. Do we give the kids the words, or do we allow them, especially for diverse populations, to show us what they have, what is their proximity, and then we just give them the extra lift? So those are some considerations for diverse populations that that we're often, considering and dancing around.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Appreciate it. Any other final thoughts on our discussion from these two chapters? Big believer in wait time, trying to use my best teaching practices. I'm not going to tell you that this isn't daunting. All right. So kind of this, as we finish up this discussion, one of the things that I kind of talk about, and something that I'm pretty passionate about, is that I want people, anybody listening to anything that we do at the Reading League, is to walk away with something to work from. So these were some of the applications that I thought of, but they're not limited to. And I also put on here a couple of the texts that I've referenced, and I found incredibly valuable, that expands these two chapters beyond just what Hiebert has shared. And so some of the applications I thought, and it does, and I heard Robin talk a little bit about it too, it's like we're planning lessons that incorporate a variety of vocabulary learning strategies. And I think that that's important no matter what content you teach. And I think of Sarah, who's teaching a special ed intervention, you're going to pull vocabulary for all of the content that they may be needing. And that is incredibly helpful. And so that is one application, is to start to plan and pre-plan. Maybe take that time to look at the Edem online and see if there's words to bring in, finding and building those word maps, phonology pieces, or understanding how the English works. So like the be, the bend, the beings, continuing to grow in our own knowledge of that. And two books that I really like with that is the Uncovering the Logic of English with Denise Ide, as well as English Isn't Crazy. And English Isn't Crazy sounds so silly, but I got that through some of the training I did with the Children's Dyslexia Center. And it was like very, very fun to think about how it is in all of the roots. And so like, if that idea around German, French, if that chapter 4 was important to you and you want to expand on that, then those two books would definitely be the ones in which to do so. So again, I love sharing other things. The second way is to incorporate vocabulary instruction through those daily routines and across subjects, which both come with the plan and then the do. And so when you look at that, some ways that you can do that comes from what I recommended, that Morpheme Magic and Deb Glazer. That is a really awesome book, and it does talk about the roots and suffixes in an order and how it builds off of them. And then another one, which was a book study that we've done 2 years ago with the Reading League Wisconsin, which was Bringing Words to Life. And I think of these because, again, it's not just limited to that. The application goes far beyond just these 3 suggestions. But I did take one of the big things that I found very valuable was the importance of fostering a classroom culture where students are encouraged to explore and discuss words. So I share these application ideas with you. I share these resources with you with a way to start kind of thinking and opening it up. Does anybody have other resources that you might have used that go beyond these 4 that you want to share, or tools? You're free to put those in the chat or add on. Well, sounds great. Hopefully you came up with some more too, besides my 3. But I think, and I really hope that everybody can put in the chat your reflection. What changes will you consider for creating or enhancing habits for morphology and word history instruction? So think about that, and I'll give you like 5 minutes of think time. And in that think time, if you would want to share your reflection in the chat, I would appreciate it. Or if you don't want to type, you can unmute. Thanks, Robin, for sharing that in the chat. The beneath the surface of the words, it's a really good one. I like that. I think for my intervention course, one of the changes that I'm going to consider adding more to is simply just looking at connecting words and building those, not a word wall, but building in those connections to words and continuing to learn as we go. I think someone put in here, and I'll share it out if you're not monitoring it, the idea that Chris shared, like, continuing to learn about words that can be taught together to help students with reading and spelling. I love that. I think that's something. For your example of two, twin, and twice, and then the why do we do the W, that's a really helpful thing when it comes to teaching that. I love the being more intentional with the words I choose to focus on with students and encouraging word maps. That's something I think I want to do as well. That word map's going to be very helpful. And thank you, Rebecca, for putting that in the chat. All of these are really great simple ads. And we say simple because it just requires our big brain, or as Robin would say, it requires us to geek out. And geeking out will help all of us kind of learn and grow. And I think Mary's right with asking students to show their words and how they find it. Those independent reading books and that application. That was something I thought that I really liked, was the examples that were in these 2 chapters around what teachers were doing to make that word conscious classroom, but then also being like, hey, this one comes here and that one. That is a word that connects today. Sarah M added that using reader teacher book lists to look for words because they have a lot of those frequent words in science and social studies. I agree. The speech path, which, by the way, if you've not made friends with your speech pathologist or your speech teachers in your schools, you guys should become best friends, because their word knowledge and language knowledge is equally as important as our literacy knowledge. So I'm going to plug that too. But that their list of words, I think Golden Words is another great book that connects to that, for a list of words to think about. Did anybody have a reaction to that concept of like the academic words that was talked about in these 2 chapters? It just popped in my mind. That's why I asked. Thanks. Take a breath. Thanks, Jennifer, for sharing that. Being purposeful in instruction around word matrices, those are also awesome options. Word matrices have shown up many frequently. I don't know what everybody's school has, but like Lumio is a word matrices tool that you can use to create. And there's a lot of free tools available. So if you've not used that, Microsoft Word even has it. So with that, let's kind of wind down and be cognizant of time. So did we meet our learning targets? Do we feel that there is an understanding of the importance of core vocabulary? I would say we do. You can give a thumbs up or thumbs down. Yes. Do you feel like we understand the importance of language history and the ideas on how to incorporate it into instruction? Yay! To clarify the importance of both core vocabulary and core reading in order to see big results through small changes. I think we've all established how we can make some small changes. And so I agree with that. And I'm going to give a thumbs up on that one. Okay. That means I did my job mildly well with the strategy that we've set up at the book with the Reading League. Anything else? Any final adds? Okay, fantastic. Well, what's next? Next week, on July 20th, Amy McGovern of Season 9 and another board member, she will be sharing chapters 5 and 6 with that multiple meanings and use of words, which I think just expands on what we've done here. And then chapter 7 and 8 is with Jeannie, our president. Vocabulary networks of informational texts that connects to all of this. And then of course we have Gabby who's on today, the vocabulary study for English learners. So we have things to look forward to. Some other fun stuff that's going on too with the Reading League. If you haven't signed up or are available, come to Brookfield, Wisconsin and join us for our conference in October. And then continue to partner with anybody, follow us on Facebook and social media and all of that. Always new ideas, connect with me. I'd love to make more friends and continue to have these nerdy conversations. And finally, if you were at the first one and you didn't notice, we have a form that shows that you were here so you can get those professional learning credits. And so I'm going to add this to the chat. And you guys should all be able to. It was in there in case you missed it, but I have to go back to find it. So please forgive me. Jeannie had it in there. This is our form to show a certificate of attendance. This was for this meeting is the first one. And then there's the certificate for attendance if you made it last week because that certificate of attendance was not there. So if you want to review or access all of this that is available to you, we will post the recording on YouTube. And yeah, I appreciate you all. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for sharing your morning with me. And thanks for talking about nerdy word things. Let me know if you need anything else, and then I will end the meeting with 10 minutes to spare. Because there is a winery tour and birthdays to celebrate. And I have a softball game. Thank you all. Enjoy your summer.
Are you still there? Are you still there?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
What I was going to ask was with that conference that you're having,
Yep.
is there any chance that is going to be virtual? Or
It is
only
virtual. Yes.
It is virtual.
Yep. There's part of it that's virtual. We live stream it.
I didn't know that. In that
Yep.
case, I can join. Excellent.
I
I
love
thought
that.
it was only face to face.
Oh, no.
No,
Let
excellent.
me send it to you and then
Thank
we
you.
can you can check on how to sign up and register to get the live stream.
Okay.
So Dr. Hiebert will be there and we have a variety, like 6 different speakers all through the course of the day.
Wow. Okay.
So it's awesome. I got to just find it on, I got to look at another tab. So please forgive me while I send that to you.
It's fine.
Where are you joining us from?
Sydney, Australia.
Oh, wonderful.
So actually, that conference is going to go, it'll be daytime for you, but it'll be all through the night here.
Well,
So
I think it's also recorded too. So
I might watch part, was going to say, I'll watch part of it and then watch the full in the recording. Yeah.
yes. Nope. That's a big thing that we're doing. So the Reading League Wisconsin conference is Conference 2024 includes Freddy Hiebert. Then I think we have Cats, Hugh Cats. It's just in October, and so it takes me a while to find it on our website.
It's all right.
My apologies. There it is. Turning the Tide, that is what it's called. It is Natalie Wexler, Jack Fletcher, Antonio Ferraro, and then Terry Newland. So here is the link.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then that will get you the free the registration pieces to it, and then also get you the access to the online items.
Oh, is that in the chat? Did you say?
It is in the chat. Do you want me to send it to you? Do you want to put your email in and I can send you?
Okay, I'll put my email in.
Were you
I'll put
able
it
to see it in the chat?
I can see, I think I can see it in the chat actually. That's fine.
Okay,
I thought I'd do both. Hang on.
that would be lovely.
Now I've got to get, okay, I've got that.